Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Ben Chodor, and welcome to Insights. This is like a really cool show and opportunity for me because it gives me a chance to interview people that I'm really impressed with, that I've met along the way, or someone has introduced me to. This one's a really special one to me because, first, Ron Tite wrote an amazing book. I've read it twice, finished it last night on a red eye back home for my second read through. Think, Do, Say. Everyone should read this. I think this is, listen, anyone could talk about sales motivation and anyone could talk about, building a better team and stronger team. But anyone who's in any business, or any brand, any company, you got to read a book like this. I loved it. And it's not just someone saying what you're supposed to do. It was a lot of think, do, say, right? But I was at the content marketing conference a couple months ago. And normally I show up at the conference, go to our booth, meet with some clients. I was interviewed on the content marketing show, and then I was flying home in the afternoon. I had like 45 minutes, 50 minutes before I had to go to the airport, and one of our heads of marketing said, hey, I'm gonna go hear this keynote from this guy, Ron Tite, and you wanna come? And I said, I haven't spent much time with Kathy in a couple months, so I said, all right, I'll come sit with you and we'll go. And I'll probably cut out really right, halfway through, a quarter of the way through. I stayed to the very end, and it was Ron Tite speaking. Since we're a streaming company, and I started in the world of production, I've sat through some of the world's most famous public speakers and keynotes of some of the world's largest organizations. I gotta say, this was the one keynote, everything he said, I was like, oh my God, this is spot on. And it was one of the few times when his presentation was over, I wished it wasn't over, and then I did something I never do. I almost became like a fanboy. I actually waited online with 3 or 4 other people, not to ask them a question, not to say it, just to say, I loved your presentation. And because it takes a lot to get me excited about when someone speaks, because I hear so many people speak. And then I did another thing that was pretty ridiculous. On the way to the airport, I sent him a LinkedIn message that one of the best presentations I ever saw. And then I noticed that he has a book coming out. I ordered the book a few days later, and then it came like, a couple weeks later, and I am so glad. So I babbled there, but at least this is all coming from a real place. This is what I'm all about. It's about not being scripted. It's about being really true and real to who you are. So let me introduce you to Ron Tite, the author of Think, Do, Say. Ron, welcome to Insights.
Ben, thank you for having me, and thank you for such a lovely introduction. That was amazing. And I think it says a lot about you and about your character that we all experience great stuff, we read great stuff, we hear great stuff, but there's a lot of inertia required to actually go, you know what, I'm going to actually send this person a note and just say thank you. So thanks for sending that. I think it says a lot about you.
And with no ask, right? And which later on, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and you do a whole thing on this on LinkedIn about how people approach you and everything that goes along with it. I didn't have an ask, and sometimes it's weird to send someone a note without an ask. And I try to do that a lot with my global staff. We have 1,300 people around the world, and Chodor itself has about 8,000 people globally. And every now and then, when someone does something in the organization, I just like to send them a note going like, hey, you really appreciate it, and thank you. And the response I normally get from someone who works in our office in Niagara Coil or someone else in the world is like, oh my God, like, why did the president of our organization reach out to me? And I'm like, because it's all about our people, right? And so it blew me away.
You know what's interesting is somebody reached out and said, I'd love to grab a call just to get your perspective on this. And I had met him, it wasn't a complete cold call.
Uh-huh.
And I said, yeah, sure. So, I hopped on a call and listened and gave some advice. And then he said, can I just ask you, why are you helping me? And I said, well, I have no agenda here. You asked for help. I gave it.
Yep.
And that's how cynical we are. That we're like, yeah, but what's your agenda?
Yeah. I feel exactly the same. All right. I want to jump right into this because I know your time is really important. First, what was the first job you ever had?
The very first job was a newspaper boy in Oshawa, Ontario, which is Canada's Flint, Michigan. It used to be home of the largest General Motors plant. So I was a paper boy, and I know we're tight for time, but you have to. So I would deliver the paper that was voluntary payment. So if you wanted to pay, you could pay, and that money went to the carrier. And if you didn't want to pay, you didn't have to pay because it was really just about the horrible ads. It wasn't the
Wow.
peak journalism. And so when I inherited the paper route, I converted more people from non-paying to paying than anybody else in the system. And I was voted the carrier of the year for the Oshawa this week for that conversion rate. But this was such an important lesson because I grew up in a big apartment building and I delivered the papers in the apartment building, and the person before me didn't live in the apartment building.
Right.
So if Ron Tite from 408 is coming to collect, well, you're not going to pay me? Of course you're going to pay me. And so that early lesson of like, you know what, it's great to do business who know us, who really know us, and keep your friends close.
I love that story. I mean, it shows, listen, you were a marketer how old were you at the time, about?
I was 10 years old.
I love it. So you were hustling at 10 years old. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Which makes me think my first job that I ever had that wasn't like a real job, like in high school, it was during the gas shortage in the U.S. Somewhere in the late 70s or somewhere in the 70s.
Jimmy Carter, yeah.
Yep. And so there was I lived in a garden apartment complex, and there was always lines, the gas station at the end of the garden apartment, and I sold coffee. I went up and down selling coffee, and I knew most of the people because most of them lived in the apartment, and everyone bought it. And that's how my first job I ever made, how I hustled. All right, so here's another question I got for you. Why write the book and why now?
I was really frustrated. I mean, you prefaced it a little bit, but I grew up during the, grew up professionally during, the era of traditional advertising and wrote more TV spots than I ever cared to imagine. And it was all supposed to be so great, wasn't it? Remember when digital was supposed to just be this promised land, when everybody would get the right messages at the right time, and we would all be so fulfilled in our jobs. And I thought it sucked. Like this, what is happening here? There was so much potential, and still nobody is using the tools to their full advantage. Still, people are unhappy in their work, and still, people are being disrupted. Why is that? And I just thought, we're overthinking this, and it's time to get back to some business basics. And when I looked at what really separated great brands and great leaders, it was really based on what they think, what they did, and what they said. And I thought we needed that simple framework to guide people.
Yeah, I love this story you tell in the book about REI. Do you mind I tell us a little bit about it so they actually understand? Don't give it all away because I want them to read it all in the book, but
yeah, I'll tell it with a cliffhanger, so they're forced to buy the book. And then he said, "You'll have to buy the book." No, REI, which is an outdoor equipment co-op in I think 33 states in the U.S. Competing heavy retail. I mean, retail has just been the most disrupted industry of anything. And REI came out in 2015 and launched. They were starting an initiative called #OptOutside.
Yep.
And in the announcement of it, they established what their brand belief, and they don't use the term brand belief, it's what I use, but their brand belief. And they said, we believe a life lived outside is a life well lived. So that's the first step, which is they don't believe in the thing they sell, because other people sell that.
Yep.
And they don't believe in, promotions and everything else. They actually believe in something that is strategically linked to what they sell, but is above and beyond that. So they believe a life lived outside is a life well lived. Secondly, what did they do to reinforce that belief? Because it's really easy to, talk about that. Well, what they did was they closed the store on Black Friday, a day that, everybody is, in other stores trampling sales staff. So they closed the store on Black Friday. So they did it. And then they talked about it. And it is a really authentic and honest way, with the CEO being the face of it. So they thought it, they did it, they said it. And I thought it was just such a great example of think, do, say in action. And they still do it today, and it grows and grows. And to all the doubters out there, the first year they did it and closed on Black Friday, they actually grew revenue 9 points year over year.
You know what the best part of this story is also? So I told that little story before I got on the plane. I was having a drink with with our CFO in San Francisco. And I said, in his comment being a CFO and cynical, he goes, oh yeah, but they were still open cyber-wise, right? So people go online. I said, no, they shut down the whole thing. So they even wanted their customers they wanted them to be outside enjoying life, right? As opposed to, and when he said it, he didn't even believe me. Ron, he pulled out his phone, he Googled it, and he goes, oh my God, you're right. They're not even open to buy online. That's a brand you love. And then two other people we had said, 3 years ago when they did it for the first time, they became members. Both people the other two people at the table said, I became members of REI right after that. So it actually worked.
Amazing.
You know?
I love it. I love it.
Brand belief, I mean, which goes back down to, it is brand belief, right? So why is brand belief so important, and why do so many people get it wrong?
Well, it's important because it really does provide a thread through all of your communications and and you need something that links all that stuff together. It's the check that we need, right? Like, does this serve our higher purpose? And people think they get it with mission and vision and all that. And those have become, they're very focused on the tactical side of the business of our mission is to become the best retailer in the world. And they're often written with it's just like it's a buzzword bingo card. And the CEO, kind of refers to it in some flippant, that's the first slide of their deck at an offsite. And then the whole room, a group of robots repeats the mission statement. And the reality is that doesn't mean anything to anybody, to how it affects their own individual performance or what they're supposed to do to live up to that. They can say it, they can repeat it, but it means nothing to them. And brand belief is I think it's so much easier to articulate. Don't tell me what you sell, tell me what you believe.
Right.
And the organization can believe something. It's also a nice check for the person to go, do I believe that? Because if I don't, then I don't know, maybe I'm not in the right place, and that's okay. But maybe I should align my values and my beliefs with the organization that I give my time and energy to.
I love it. In the book, one of the things that was really compelling to me is the story you told about a chef who did something with Red Bull, right? And he doesn't even drink the product, right? And they still wanted him. Like, why?
Yeah, Matt Basili, Red Bull came to him and said, "We'd like to do some shoot some video with you." And he said, "I'd love to. I love your brand, but I can't drink Red Bull. It just my body doesn't react well to that much caffeine." And they were like, "So we don't we expect you to? You're gonna ask you to chug Red Bull we're gonna ask you to chug Red Bull on screen? No." And Red Bull kind of stated, "Look, we connect with people on values and beliefs." And we know that enough of those people will convert. And those that don't, that's totally cool.
But isn't that also part of the reason why people don't trust influencers the way they used to trust influencers? I mean, I heard a story.
Yeah,
I heard a story where Justin Timberlake, for an example, was a sponsor or was an influencer for Levi's and for Nike, right? But he's loved Nike his whole life, right? He always is wearing Nike. He is passionate about the product. He's using Levi's theoretically because he's paid to use Levi's. And when he does a Levi's spot, it doesn't really move the needle, right? But when he does anything Nike related, it moves the needle. So it's more, you have to be true. But why do you think influencers are dead, or paid influencers are dead?
No, not at all. And we, full disclosure, we here at Church and State, we run some influencer programs. We have, and we continue to do so. I think the first point is, I think there is a difference between the celebrity as influencer,
right?
Because celebrities, I think they've always been influencers. Yep. And I think there is a belief but this is not their only gig, right? This is the side hustle for them. Whereas a lot of traditional, our traditional thought or definition of influencer, that is the hustle.
Yep.
That is their job. And I think it's those people who lost trust. And the reason for that is that the reason that a lot of consumers went to those people as content creators was it was a wave of people who realized they could shoot and produce content cheaper than ever before.
Right.
They could distribute that content faster and more efficient to more people than ever before, and they could deliver messaging that they really wanted to deliver. They didn't have to go to legal and say, is it okay if I say this? And so what came across was a really authentic, unbiased, uh, 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 creative and content. People bought into that. And then the second, algorithms changed and social platforms
Yep.
and brands said, how do we get to our end audience? And we can just go to those people because they've built up an following, and we'll just pay them. And then the second that those people just sold their soul for a paycheck, and we're just shilling anything and everything, and that's where people are like, no, but this is why I came to you,
Right.
because you didn't have a sales bias. So can you still use them? 100%.
Right.
You can use them as a media channel.
Yep.
And just compare the cost of those eyeballs to other forms of media, or you can do your homework and really connect with people who authentically are linked to your product and who don't just want the paycheck. And when you do that, I think it can still be really powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting because at Intrado, part of our business is, media monitoring is a big part of our business and our customers. And, and then we own a referral marketing company called Ambassador, which is all about creating micro-influencers, true influencers for people who love the product and want to get their friends involved with the product. We actually find that so much more powerful than anything else.
They try more, they're more authentic,
Yep.
They're eager. Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, so here's the question, going back to the book and the TDS, the Think, Do, Say. One is, I loved your little wheel and where you explained everything about TDS. But as someone's coming up with their whole brand belief, you're really adamant about you have to follow this strict order. Like, how did you come up with the order, and why can't you bypass any part of it?
Well, some people want to just do one of the three. Right. And, if you just think as an organization, then you're a think tank. You really have to crank on stuff. That's where you make your money.
Yep.
But if you just do, and it's not linked back to something, then it's way too random, and you're probably a sweatshop. And if all you do is talk about stuff, but you don't actually ever do it, then you're in constant churn mode and always in acquisition. And it's really funny because often people in introducing me, or like I did a TV interview, and the TV interview going, he's the author of Think, Say, Do. And they want to put the say before the do.
Right.
Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. And then the do is the final place. And that, I think, is just wrong. I think that if people lack trust, they lack trust because they hear something, and then when they go to experience it, the experience doesn't line up with the promise that they heard.
Right. And
so the action has to already be in place so that by the time we do talk about it, we're already delivering on it, and we deliver on the expectation. If we get those mixed up in the order, people aren't going to trust us.
All right. So you give a good analogy of that with camper and Casa Camper, right? How you went to their hotel, but they followed it exactly, right? They think, they do, and they say their whole brand belief in everything they do.
Yeah, this was it's a great hotel. They have two locations, one in Berlin and one in Barcelona. And my wife was like, hey, there's this hotel, we should stay there. And I looked at the logo and I was like, that looks like the Camper shoe logo. It's called Casa Camper. Is this the shoe people? So I literally booked some time with the general manager while I was there because I wanted to write off the trip. And, I interviewed her to say, I want to, I've got this book coming out, and I want to talk to you about why do you own a hotel? You're a shoe company. And she was adamant. She said, we are not a shoe company. We're a company who happens to make shoes. But how we define ourselves is based on health, simplicity, and design.
Right.
And so they had the think part, and then they just said, when we look to diversify our portfolio, which is another great part of having a purpose or a belief that goes beyond what you sell, you can diversify your portfolio. And so they said, what else could we get into? We looked at health, simplicity, and design, and thought hospitality. Now this could be the thing that could really separate us out. And so they built this hotel, and they had all these great touches of actions they took to reinforce health, simplicity, and design. But the one I absolutely loved most was their stairwells. Because stairwells, we forget about the stairwells. We ignore the stairwells. There's like, it's never, nothing good ever happened in a stairwell. But in this hotel, the stairwells were as important as the rest of the hotel. They painted them. There were art on the walls. And that was beautiful, great design. So, yeah, I absolutely loved every experience within the hotel because it all laddered up to the purpose that they established.
Which is awesome. Which is what everyone should do, and everyone's brand. You gotta follow your beliefs. Which now we're gonna make a right turn in your book, and my favorite new term is pitch slap. First, explain the term so people understand what it is, and give us a couple examples. I love the list that you gave were the people who pitch slap on LinkedIn, but that's a whole nother thing. So I would love to tell them a little bit about how you came up with it, why is it in the book, and what does it mean?
So first of all, what it means, and people can probably appreciate what it means. You hear the term, and you're like, I kind of think, yeah, I know what that means because I've felt it. But a pitch slap to me is just when you put your own needs ahead of the person that you're interacting with, and we've all experienced the pitch slap on some level, where somebody's talking to us, but in the back of their mind, they just want to pitch us. That's all they want to do. And everything they say before that is just to manipulate the conversation so they can deliver that pitch. And then when it happens, what do you feel like?
Right.
It feels like you've been pitch slapped. And how I came up with it was I didn't come up with it. I was just sitting in a meeting with a old client. He said something about pitch slap, and I said, that is a great term. I'd like to use that somewhere. And I said, I will give you full credit. He's like, oh, I don't remember who. I heard from a guy who heard from a guy. So yeah, I incorrectly get credited with creating it, but it wasn't me.
Good. I'm going to keep on telling people it was you because I think it's pretty awesome. All right, just to change the subject for a second. So, are you still a stand-up comic, or were you a stand-up comic? Like, how did comedy get into your life? I'm assuming it happened after your paper route.
Yeah, it did. But although that was the source of much material. Yeah, I was, an ad guy well, I've always been an ad guy for most of my career. I actually started as an account guy running the Intel business, and then started doing stand-up comedy, and eventually had those two worlds come together and move into creative. But yeah, I was a touring stand-up for 20 years. I still hosted a show up until 2 years ago when we my wife and I had our first child, and that just was some demands on my time. But so yeah, I was a stand-up for many years, and I think it's weird, because I speak a ton, but I consciously had them remove comedy from my bio.
Right.
I didn't, because I think I had this weird moment where I realized there's no market for a comedian who knows about business, but there's a massive market for a funny business guy.
Right.
And it's a very subtle pivot.
I'm gonna just disagree just a drop. So my son, he's 25, always wanted to be a comic and took comedy classes and then did a bunch of shows. And when he started to look for other jobs and he talked to people, they love that he did it because they go, if you can stand up in front of a room and talk to people and you're looking for a sales role, man, then you could definitely go into a conference room or a boardroom and pitch our product, because there's nothing scarier than stand-up comedy, especially the night that you're not funny.
Yeah, the skill set is incredibly valuable. Yes, 100%. The skill set is incredibly valuable. It's amazing. And I've learned so much, and being able to work a room and being able to pick up on the vibe in a room and just going in without a script and figuring something out, and we have testing material, all that stuff. And it worked when I was younger in my career, when I was a writer, because they'd go, oh, this guy's, he knows what he's doing, right? Because he's a writer and he's also a comic. But as I got more senior, they wanted the creative director, the executive creative director, who knew more about their business than they did about the craft. And I think the same thing from speakers. Yes, the speaker can be funny, but you want to know that they've got the entrepreneurial or the corporate chops
Absolutely.
to give you the
Yeah.
insights you need to grow your
You do the
business.
perfect mix in your keynote. What's a bigger high for you when you get up and you do a 10, 15-minute set of comedy and you kill it, or when you're in front of 500 or 1,000 people doing a keynote and you nail it? What's like a better high?
A keynote for sure,
Yeah.
because you can combine both. Where you can go like, oh, I'm going to try a new bit here, a
Right.
humorous bit, which has a strategic, point to it. And so in the comedy club, you hit the punchline, you get the laugh. You're like, okay, the bit works. That's
Right.
amazing, and that's a great high. But what keynotes deliver you is that yes, you still get the laughter where everybody gets the joke. And by the way, if you're speaking to Volvo, and you make a joke about seatbelts, everybody in the room gets the
Right.
joke. Everybody. Whereas the comedy club, you're not sure. But then you also get the moment, the moment of silence that follows the laughter.
Right.
And for me, if you can silence a room and get people nodding and seeing them take notes, that's really powerful.
Awesome. I love that. All right, I got 3 questions left for you. Question 1 is, what's your personal
Right.
brand? What's your personal brand belief?
My personal brand belief is that I believe that people need to laugh so they can learn. That we need to entertain and capture attention for people to get them to pay attention, and so that we can then deliver the thing that we need to deliver, or we need to sell the thing that we need to deliver, So it is that balance between capturing
Yep.
attention and delivering on what they're looking for.
All right, next question. What's your Uber rating?
4.8, I
Is
think.
it? Good. I'm a 4.64, but I think it's because I live in New York City. And then the question has nothing to do with anything, but I've been pondering this. This is what I do when I'm on planes for a long time. If someone came in
Yeah.
for a job interview with you, and his Uber rating happened to be like a 195, would you think twice about hiring him? And he had like 500
But
rides.
what's funny is now I'm looking, right?
Yeah.
4.87.
Oh my God.
4.87.
You must be a really nice. But it's Canada. People are friendlier in Canada. You have good ratings.
That's
But
right.
like, would you hire someone if
I'm
they
the
came in
jerk.
and they had a
Yeah.
1.9? Like, would you think? What would you think about me if I said my Uber rating's a 1.95?
Oh, then I wouldn't hire you. There's no way I would hire you.
Yeah, it's exactly how I feel. All right, my last question for you is, so we get to pay this forward, because you and I were talking earlier about just in LinkedIn in general, and as how we're both really tired of getting pitch slapped on LinkedIn, but every now and then someone reaches out to you and they ask you something sincere, and you feels great to reach out to them and pay it forward. So can you recommend a book after everyone's read, Think, Do, Say, another book you think they should read? And I don't want a sales motivation book or how to conquer the world in business book, just like another book that you recommend to read.
You have to read Scott Stratton and Allison Stratton's book, The Jackass Whisperer,
All right,
because
so
this is
what's
the
what's it
subtitle is like
about?
how to deal. Yeah, it's like how to deal with the worst people, at work and online and in life, including you, because we are all jackasses. We're all jackasses, and we interact with jackasses, and it's a really funny take on all the different types of jackasses that we interact with.
That's awesome. All right, I was only going to ask you 3, but I got to ask you one more because you brought it up, and I remember you mentioning it when I saw you speak live. How awesome is it being a dad?
Ben, it's I didn't think I was going to be a dad,
Right, that's what you were
because I
saying
think
when you were
imagine
speaking live. Yeah.
3. And so I'm going to be 50 in June, and I have a almost 2-year-old and one on the way in coming in March. It is the most incredible thing. It is a life changer in so many different ways.
Yep.
Love it.
It's really interesting because we're very similar in age, and I have 25-year-old boy-girl twins, and I met my wife in college, and we had them really young. And I kind of think if I had them now, I'd even be a better father now, because when you're 25 and you're trying to build your career, you're juggling a lot, and you don't savor moments. And because you never thought you were going to be a dad, when you're doing it now, it's just got to be unreal.
Yeah, it's certainly like there aren't the financial
Right.
constraints we had when we were
Yeah.
younger, and there's that just the load off
Yeah.
there, and there's also having more flexibility and freedom with your day as an entrepreneur, and owning my own business, I can kind of do some of that, and yeah, I mean, it's our life path is our
Yeah.
life path, and
Pretty amazing.
I'm happy
But
we're both in the places that
I
we're in.
think that's incredible. But isn't it the craziest thing? It's like you never you love your wife, and I always love my wife. Met her in college, but the moment that kid is born, that unconditional love, you hear other people talk about it, and it's like, yeah, 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 yeah. But the moment you hold your kid,
Yeah.
it's why I do
I said to
everything.
my wife last night,
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, we've turned into those people because this will mean something to the parents out there, but you'll see how ridiculous this is." I said, when we came home tonight, I picked him up from daycare, and we got to the door before I could open the door with my key. I said, "Knock on the door," and he's not even two, and he picked up like that with a little
yeah.
knuckle, and he knocked with a little knuckle. And I thought, who taught him that? That's how you're supposed to knock. Like, isn't a kid supposed to just go like that kind of thing? But he knocked with a little knuckle.
I
And
love
that
that.
was the most adorable thing.
I love that.
I'm like that. People now. All right.
That's what life's all about. Hey Ron, thank you so much, and everybody. This is really. I'm not just saying this. It's a great book. It's changed the way I thought. I actually took a couple photos. I actually sent this to my entire leadership team to get, but I actually took a couple pictures yesterday, and we're sending it to like different sales leaders and getting their comments back, like a one page, and they were like, everyone was blown away. They love what think, do, say, and everyone has their philosophy on how to do it. You put it together pretty amazing, and thank you, Ron. Have a great rest of the year.
Ben, thank you, and thanks to everybody watching, and happy holidays.
Bye.